Well, welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us to before, during, and after a print competition. So Lydia and I, well, I guess I should start with an introduction. So I'm one of the print comp co-chairs. Lydia Miller is the other print comp co-chair, and Jay Cathell, pardon me? Oh, Jay Cathell is on the board, and he is our liaison between the print committee and the board. So he kind of represents us and handles questions and all that stuff. So does anything else, do either one of you want to introduce yourselves a little bit more than that, or?
I think they know who we are. We're good.
Right. Yeah, I should also add that Jay is a stellar competitor. Is really kicking butt in print competition lately, so it's good for us to have him.
And he earned bling. Don't forget that.
Pardon me?
He got new bling bling this year.
Oh yeah.
So
See, look at that big smile.
Yeah, I'm happy with that.
Yeah.
bling when it comes to print competition is always good, right, Joe?
Always good, yeah.
Joe puts us all to shame in that regard. So I think when you first start entering print competition, and honestly, even when you've been doing it for a while, it can be overwhelming. There's a lot to think about. From what subjects do you shoot? Do you use your client images? Do you go out and shoot just for print competition? I love this image, but are the judges going to love this image? What do I do with this image after it's been judged and I thought it was awesome and the judges did not agree? Do I tweak it? Do I let it go? So we wanted to kind of cover the basics of print competition, from getting started to kind of what happens during a print competition in terms of the judging, and after print competition is over, kind of taking feedback from critiques or letting an image go and starting over again. So this is meant to be a discussion. So if anybody has questions, maybe just raise your hand, because I think I can see everybody on the screen, or put it in the chat. Maybe Lydia, you can monitor the chat while I'm talking, and then we can kind of switch off. So I was going to start with getting inspired. So how do you decide what to enter in print competition? Do you choose your client images? Do you choose images that you took when you were traveling? Do you choose images that you shoot specifically for print competition? And you can choose, you can enter any or all of those, but how do you know what's good? And so one of the things that I think a lot of people do is they will look in the loan collection book. They will look at the Geofont, the Grand Imaging Award finalists from from PPA's print competition. You can go to museums and look at paintings and other types of art to get inspired. So drawing inspiration, I think, is a great way to start. Those are great places to start. I heard Carl Kaler, and I don't know if everybody knows him, but he's very well known in PPA. He's an excellent competitor. He's a juror. He said that sometimes for inspiration, he'll think of a title and then he'll try to shoot to match that title. So that can be something that you think about too. So then once you've photographed your images and you're thinking about entering something, it's important to get, I think at least, feedback from others, but not too much feedback from too many people, because if you ask 10 people, you're likely going to get 10 opinions. But ask people that do well in print competition, you know, what they think of it. Does it have the same impact to them as it does to you? Because sometimes we get so caught up in our own images that it's hard to separate ourselves. And so you look at something and you think it's fantastic, and then you send it to 3 people and they don't agree with you. At the end of the day, obviously, it's your call about whether or not you want to enter it, but it definitely helps to have feedback from other people who know what they're doing. Then there's the way that judging works, and I think probably everybody is familiar with it. It's called the 12 elements of a merit image. And that's kind of everything from creativity to style, to lighting, to technical excellence, to storytelling and impact. And I'm going to cover some of those. If you go to MDPPA's website and you go under the print competition tab, we have a link to the 12 elements of a merit image. I don't obviously need to read those to you. And if you go to the link that's right below it, it's the ins and outs of print competition. It's the slides that Lydia and I presented last year. There's about halfway through, we have all of the 12 elements listed with a link on PPA's website to people like Carl Kaler and people who know really well, kind of explaining in great detail what storytelling means or what impact means. I personally, I think storytelling and impact are the hardest ones because it's really subjective, right? You might think it has impact, the judges might not think it has impact, but it's kind of one of those, you know it when you see it. If you ever watch print competition, there's times where an image comes around and it just, you know, takes your breath away. That's obviously impact, but storytelling and impact are really important for images to do well. And so you could have an image that's technically well done, and it probably will, you know, assuming it's technically well done, it might score kind of in the low 80s, but really for things to go to score much higher or to go into the lone category or imaging excellence category, I should say now, for PPA, they really need to be storytelling images. Think about how many hundreds and thousands of images the judges see. So it's really important that your image have impact and tell a story. And kind of tied along with that is titling your images. And so a good title can help an image. I think kind of a neutral title might not help your image, and it might not help your image, and it probably won't hurt your image. If you title something, let's just say you photographed a high school senior and she just looked really sad and down, and you just titled it, I don't know, Rhonda, that doesn't kind of say anything. But if you titled it something where you're telling the judges that, sorry, something like dealing with, I knew it was going to happen.
Do you want me to take over from here for a second while you do that?
Yeah, do you mind?
No, go ahead.
I'm gonna mute. I'll be right back. Sorry.
Okay, go ahead and mute yourself. All right, so going back to titling, so titles are great, and when you guys come up with these creative foreign language titles that A, I may not be able to pronounce correctly, or B, the judges may not be able to understand, believe it or not, that can hurt you sometimes when it comes to titling. So fun and creative is always nice, but also stay away from things that are way too technical. Think of your reader, like think of them as high schoolers. If a high schooler cannot understand or read whatever it is that you're submitting as a title, then probably your average person may not either. So I'm not trying to dumb things down, but there are sometimes titles where I'd have to spend a little bit of time looking up to see, okay, is this the name of a bird? Is this a creature? Is this a planet? So if we don't understand what it is, chances are the judges may not either. So keep things simple. English is nice unless if you're doing a competition in a foreign language where they do understand Spanish or French or Chinese. Or so again, if we can't see it, read it, understand it, chances are we're also not going to transpire that title correctly to the judges. Transpire is not the right word, but what translate. There you go. All right, you're back.
I'm back. Thank you.
Go for it.
Had it damaged a lens and Canon shipped it back, and it was signature required. So of course it came like right when the call started. So did you cover title, Lydia? Is there anything else I need to add?
You can go over whatever was left on your mind.
So I think I was starting to use as an example, if you photographed a high school senior and she looked really sad and you just titled it Rhonda, the comments from the judges might be something like, she doesn't look happy, or she doesn't look like she wants to be there. But if you titled like something like dealing with depression, then that tells the story. So it's thinking about what does your image convey, and how can you title it appropriately. And I think everybody here has entered or watched print competition. They read the title before the image comes up. So it can definitely have a big impact if it is titled correctly. An example of one, and I know I've used this before, of images that are not titled correctly, that can actually hurt your image. So if you had a title that drew attention to something that really wasn't the main part of the image, I saw one entered in print competition once where somebody talked about like the reflections on the lake or something like that. And there were boys in the foreground, and it was the gazebo reflecting on the lake. But the photo was really about the boys, not the gazebo, but the title kind of implied that it was about the gazebo. So I think that hurt that image. So that's just an example of that. Another thing about entering images is editing. And editing for print competition is really different than editing for client work. Judges see pretty much every single pixel of your image. And so it's really important to look it over carefully. You might edit an image differently for print competition than you would for the client, even for the same image. So I have a dog who has two different colored eyes, and she's like German Shepherd colored. And one of her eyes is bright blue. And that's what her eye looks like. It's really light. But if I entered that in print competition, then I think that I would probably get dinged, is the word that I use. I think I would probably get dinged because I think it would draw the judge's attention. So even though that's what her eye looks like, you have to think, if a judge is looking at the image, what do you want them to see? And a lot of times people will edit to create more drama. Highlights and shadows, for example, are really important. You might put, I can't think of the word around it. No, not a stroke. I'll think of it.
A vignette.
Pardon me?
Vignette?
A vignette, thank you. You might put a vignette around it to kind of draw more attention to it. So editing for print competition is really different than editing your client images. So that's kind of another thing to keep in mind. The last thing that I wanted to talk about kind of in this category was just to kind of go over some of the terms that you'll hear during judging. And Lydia, we're going to put a link up to all the terms, right? I'm not going to go over all of them.
Yes, we can do that, or we could share it with them directly.
Okay, so if anybody wants to
talk about specific, like the most important ones, right?
Yeah, I'm just going to highlight the big ones. And so when you first listen to judging, it can be a little overwhelming because, at least for me, it was. I didn't know kind of what anything meant. I didn't know what a challenge was. I didn't know what they meant when they said muddy. So here are some of the terms that you'll hear during judging, and it's things that you need to consider as you're getting your image ready for judging. So blocked up and blown out. So blocked up shadows and blown out highlights. So blocked up shadows generally means, or blocked up areas generally means there's no detail in those areas. If you were to print it, it would print black. Blown out highlights is just the opposite. In the light areas of the image, there's no detail in the whites. And if you were to print it, it would be pure white. And so generally, the judges like to see detail in all of those areas. I think sometimes if it's not an important part of the image, you can probably get away with not having detail in the shadows. I think personally, the whites are a little bit harder, and maybe somebody else can add more to this because that's where your eye is going to go. And if you have blown out highlights, even if it's in an unimportant area, that judge's eyes are going to go right there. So when you hear blocked up or blown out, just make sure that you've got detail basically everywhere. Speaking of vignetting, burn, you will hear judges sometimes talk about an image being burned down. And if it's obvious, it's not good. And even vignetting can be a great way to draw attention to the subject. But if it's too noticeable, the judges will point that out too. Another big one that you hear a lot is cloning tracks. And so cloning tracks are basically just kind of a repetition of, let's just say, an area of the grass or an area of the trees or something like that. You wanted to get rid of, let's say, a trash can that was sitting in front of the trees, and you cloned it out, but they can see kind of the repetition of where you took it from. And that if their eyes are drawn to that, that is going to kill the score on an image. You'll hear ghosting or halo a lot, and that refers to kind of a bright line, for lack of a better way to say it, bright outline kind of around the subject. And that can come from different things. Let's say you just wanted to darken your background, but you didn't want to darken your subject. And so you have to be really careful that it doesn't look like it's dropped in, or it just doesn't look like it has basically a line around it. You'll hear that one a lot too. Keyline refers to the stroke color. So when you enter an image in print competition, they're matted, and Jay's actually going to talk about that. Or Lydia, you can talk about that. Somebody's going to talk. Jay's going to talk about it and talk about the keyline. So that's what keyline is. Muddy. I had a really hard time understanding this one for a while. But muddy is something that's lacking good tonal quality or saturation in some or all of the mid-tone or shadow areas of the image. It looks like a little flat. It just doesn't really necessarily have the full kind of range from white to black. Noise, sometimes that can be hard, especially if you're photographing wildlife early in the morning and you need a fast shutter speed. You need to bump your ISO. So there are great, obviously, noise reduction programs, but judges will call out images that are noisy. Pop is another one you hear. Pop is a good thing, assuming that they say it does pop as opposed to it doesn't pop. So, and that's an image with like really good contrast and color and exposure. So it just jumps out at you and it pops. And specular highlights. Those are extremely bright areas of a scene, usually created by like direct reflection of the sun on something. So it might be like a mirror or chrome or another highly reflective surface. And sometimes those are good because they're legitimate, right? But you just kind of have to be careful that you don't have a lot of them and they're not distracting. So does anybody have any questions so far? And I don't have to be the one to answer them. We've got some really good competitors on the line too. So or on the call, does anybody have any questions?
I don't have any questions in the chat about what you talked about, but if anybody wants to unmute and comment or ask a question, you can go ahead and do so.
I would say that for those folks that are new to competition, to ask someone that has been in competition before to look at the image and give them some guidance on it, because there are so many things that Ellen just mentioned, and it's not apparent to the new competitor what the judges actually see. They don't miss it. They don't miss a trick. They look at thousands of images. Joe will tell you, Joe Campanelli on here is an IPC judge, and those folks don't miss anything. They can judge an image in 15 seconds, usually around 15 seconds, and pretty well pick up any technical things at first glance. So I would have another person look at your image that has some experience with print competition and tell you some of the pitfalls that you're going to make on your first few tries. But you got to make them. You got to hear the judges tell you, and then it'll start sinking in.
And one thing I will say is don't ask your family members unless if they know what they're talking about.
And don't rely on Facebook.
They're always going to tell you, oh my gosh, it looks beautiful. And they're going to support you because they love you. And they're not going to be, the ones to tell you, oh, this sucks. Except if you have my son. So he definitely tells me, Mom, this sucks. It's your best work. Go do something else. But for the most part, like as well as they mean to help you, they really don't help you. So
right. But 100% obviously agree with both of you. I just think you kind of have to be careful about asking too many opinions, because you will likely hear different opinions from different people. And obviously you're going to have to decide what you're going to do, but pick 2 or 3 people that you trust and just ask them, and just kind of be open. You have to kind of have a thick skin with print competition. You just have to be open to, listening to criticisms. But it's great when you can get feedback from people kind of before you enter and make tweaks, and then you'll kind of hear more feedback as you go, hopefully. So
can I say one thing about criticism? Guys, you need to learn to separate criticism from the personal criticism towards you to criticism towards the piece that you're creating. The criticism is really going towards the art, the photo, the image. It's not you personally. So I took my degrees in art in my former life. And so one of the things that we had to do in art school is everything had to be presented and critiqued. And I can't tell you how many times I would leave a project that I've worked on for hours and hours and hours and feel like crap, because the criticism or the feedback that I got back was not what I wanted to hear after spending hours. And it finally took somebody to sit me down and say, stop taking it so personally. It's not you we're criticizing. It is how to improve what you just presented. So think about that word and really think about where that's coming from. It's coming from a good place where people truly want to help your image do better. So if you're going to take it personal and be upset and throw a temper tantrum, then this is not a place that you want to go and compete and try your hand at something new. Because some of the feedback you're going to get at something that you've poured your heart and soul into is not going to be pretty, and you're not going to agree with it. But it comes from a place where it's helping you, not hurting you personally. All right. Sorry.
And again, editing for print competition. Maybe Joe, this would be a good time. I know we're kind of talking about this later with critiques and tweaking images, but maybe you could talk now about Bad to the Bone. I do want to add one thing though, because Joe is kind enough to look at an image that I'd entered in IPC, and it was a showcase image. It did well. I was hoping obviously that it would do better. But I sent it to Joe after the fact, and I said, what do you think I could have done that would have made it go to imaging excellence? And one of Joe's, other than giving me some awesome feedback, which anyway, other than giving me some awesome feedback, Joe said one thing that really has stuck with me, which is that he does anything within reason, and I think within reason is the important thing, to create an image that the judges are going to love. And you probably don't do that for your clients' 8x10s for sure. But Joe, could you maybe talk a little bit about Bad to the Bone or anything that you want to talk about, like how you use that feedback process, maybe from start to finish?
Do you have a way of bringing it up? I have it on my desktop.
Yes, I'm going to give you, hold on a second. I'm going to give you access. Hold on. Joe Campanelli, here you are. I'm going to make you a host for a little bit.
So do I just hit share screen?
And then hit share screen and show us the image.
I'm trying to get it to open up.
I see Mary Jean's hair.
Oh, there we go.
Just her hair.
I've got her locked in the back working on some images. This is the final version of the image. Like Ellen said, this first originally started out, I think the first time it was entered was at AIM, and each competition, and now you have so many possibilities for this. You really need to take advantage of it. I just finished judging the ASP Images of Distinction, that you could enter that, that you didn't have to be a member of ASP. We judged some 1,000 images on Friday, and then on Saturday, you got a critique from all of the judges on the second day on the panel. So that's a good, kind of an object lesson. This just went through a lot of different variations with presentation, It had some noise in it, which I didn't spot, you know, so we cleaned that up. Originally, this is an image that's been photographed about an hour from my house at the St. Augustine Alligator Farm, which is one of my favorite haunts. And I had this image in my head, and I just kept going back every day until this buzzard would stick that wing out, you know, when he was kind of preening and give me that look that he wanted, you know, because it was something a little bit different for me. You know, there's nothing unrealistic in the image. I know there's a lot of people that drop in portrait backgrounds on their images and stuff like that. That just hasn't been my particular style. If that's, you know, your particular style, that's fine. I'm more of a realist. I grew up in the commercial world. I've been trying to explore those as kind of maybe a little bit breaking out of my box. And I think that's another important thing too, is that sometimes we get stuck in a rut. And for me, you know, print competition is just a way to kind of break out of the box. As far as editing goes, you know, look what Ellen said, you know, there's certain things that just jump out as judges when an image has either been over processed or noise. You don't think it's really there, and then you submit it in a competition, and like Ellen said, you know, we just go right after that kind of thing. If you think that there's an issue with an image, then you need to fix it. Even if it's natural and it looks like a problem, then you need to fix it.
Right, like Lola's eye, right? Like my dog's
exactly.
eye.
Joe, at the level of competition that you've been doing, how do you handle critiques and criticisms and all of that? Like, what's your natural instincts tell you?
You know, I've never been a person that even, I'm thinking, let's see, I'm trying to think of the numbers now. I'm beginning my 31st year of competition within PPA. Which I've entered every single year since then. When I was living in Maryland and we were very active, you know, with competition, then I think at that time was 6 competitions, I think every other month, something like that. It's a daunting thing, I'll admit. I mean, you know, 31 years doing this, to find inspiration, dealing with the critiques, you know, everybody has an opinion. And just like was hinted before, you just have to take that opinion, and are you going to listen to it? I think you should try it, because you have other avenues before you get to the final kind of goal line here, which district opened up yesterday, March 1st. I'm not sure when it closes, but you know, that's the ultimate goal here, is to run your images through district, you know, maybe and ask for the critiques, because now you have the access to critiques at district too, and also IPC. You know, it's important, you know, to listen to those critiques, listen to the judges, but in the end, it's your artwork and you have to make the final decision whether you agree with the judges or not. There were some changes I made to this, you know, that I didn't necessarily agree with, but in the long run, it helped the image.
So Joe, do you remember what the first score on this image was?
It was only like about an 83 or 85. And I think ASP last year, this was first place in Nature. I think it came in as a 98.
And it was, oh, you know what? They don't score it. I forgot they don't score it anymore.
Yeah, we don't score it at IPC and then in districts anymore, but you know, hang around for a couple more years, that'll change.
Oh yeah, for sure. So, but this was, I don't know if everybody heard at the beginning, but this image was a top 10 in the illustrative category for the Grand Imaging Awards, and that is hard to do. Joe was a diamond medal winner this year, and this image went to represent PPA for the World Cup. So clearly, I mean, to start as an 83 and to end up with those accolades it's inspirational. So
you just, like you said, you have to set your ego aside. You can't get emotionally attached. This was an image I did get emotionally attached to it, and I didn't give up on it, because I kept pushing it and pushing it and pushing it. And when you start getting up into those higher scores and you really want judges to take a look at it, so far as impact, it's, you know, they're looking for all those tiny little we consider nitpicky things, but they're not nitpicky things when you start creeping up into those 95 and above, you know, scores.
And Joe, I'm taking advantage of the fact that you're here and talking. When do you give up on an image?
When do I give up on an image?
When
Mary Jean says that just ain't gonna cut it.
No,
It's like that album. We have such different taste in images, but it's always great to have somebody look at your images. And in this case, I trust Mary Jean very well. I would say pick your mentors very carefully. That was advice I got years ago. You know, having mentors that are doing the kind of work that you want to do and are at the level that you want to be at. There's images they've given up. You know, I had to give up on an album this year. I finally just kind of said, you know, well, I've beaten this to death and it's just not doing what I want. So it's time to move on. In my case, because with moving to Florida now, I wouldn't even know what's in my library anymore, probably 100,000 images. So there's plenty to go back and choose from. But, you know, now I'm getting to a point that, you know, I want to try something a little bit different. So I've been hanging out at some of the Native American festivals down here and doing some stuff like that. So, you know, I think
There's a shift from Avion.
yeah, it could be, you know, people are always telling me, says, Joe, you know, when are you going to quit entering birds? And I said, you know, well, the birds have been very, very good to me. You know, you can go back and look, if you look on the ASP fellowship or the ASP site, my fellowship is on there, and it's an avian portfolio. And there's also a thesis with that, kind of my journey within that style of photography. Yeah, it's on our website too. You can check that out too.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
You're
you.
welcome.
All right, you can give me back control and I will.
No.
Fine, just leave your image right there. We're good.
How do I do that? I don't even know. Oh, stop share. I got it.
Okay.
Hello, I have a quick question. Joe, how
Sure.
are you today?
Good.
That website you were speaking of, is there any way we can put that website where?
Yeah,
you
I'll put
have-
it. I'll put it in the chat.
Thank you.
The ASP website, is that what you're talking about?
I believe that's what he mentioned.
Okay.
I'll put both.
I'm intrigued because I shoot wildlife. I guess when I get tired of being home. with
You
my
know,
wife.
when we
That's-
moved from
that's my release.
when we moved from Maryland, or not through, you know, there was a point in our transition stage, I would say, when I was trying to, I was burned out from the everyday, you know,
Right.
trying to get, you know, studio, and everybody's run a studio for that long. It was close to 30 years. My wife could sense it. There was an opportunity for us to sell the house and come down to Florida and be with the grandkids. And now to me, that was just a whole new level of, you know, giving me a reason to get up every day and go out and shoot. And with living in Florida, you know, we can pretty much, we had our week and a half, maybe 10 days of winter, and that was it. We hated it. You know, it was down in the 60s. You know, we don't like that.
Yes, I know. You had to wear a lightweight jacket.
We had snow when we went to Maryland.
So, well, thank
Yeah,
you. I
You're
just,
Thank
welcome.
you for sharing that.
Lydia, I just want to make sure that Joe gave you the host back, because if he leaves, you will not be able to get
Right.
it.
So Joe, what you need to do is go to participants and expand that, and you're gonna see MDPPA. And oh, actually, I can reclaim it. Never mind, I got it.
Oh, you
Yeah,
can, okay.
I thought I
I
said
got it.
leave.
Don't worry about it. You don't have to
Okay.
do anything.
You
We're good.
can't,
We're
you
good.
can't-
Thank you. I didn't realize you can reclaim host back.
yeah, sometimes you can and sometimes you can't. So,
I just did. Never mind. We're good. All right. Thank you.
so thanks, Joe. That was, well, inspiring, and I love looking at the image.
Thought when he
I
told us, don't we?
I could look at that image all day. So, so kind of the next part about kind of the before entering images is matting. And Jay, would you cover that, please?
Jay, before you start, I do have a question about matting, and you can address that as well. And it's not just the keystroke, but the outline, like if it's necessary to outline your final image or not for presentation purposes. So if you can just incorporate that into your presentation, that would be great.
Okay. Do you want to let me share? I can share my screen.
Yes, I'm just gonna make you a co-host for now.
Okay, so what does that mean? Can I share my screen? That's all I need to do.
You can share your screen in a minute.
Okay.
Go down below to where it says share screen, and then you can share screen.
Okay. Can you see it?
Now we can.
Okay. This is a matted image. it's important when you, this is called presentation of the image. This is not the color, final color I would choose, but this is a matted image. This is a key line. The white line that you see around the image is called the key line. And the image is within that in itself. The thing that's important when you're matting an image is to try to keep the viewer looking at your image and not at the mat, and have their eyes not wander outside the mat. And the way to accomplish that is usually by choosing a color within the image that kind of complements it, but doesn't distract from it. Now, making a mat is rather easy to do. I'm going to take this image back to, let me get back on here to native. Okay, that's what the image looked. This is an image I shot at Aztec a few years ago. In order to do a mat, I built an action, and I'm willing to share it with anybody that wants it. And this is how hard, I'm just going to click this and boom, there's your mat. That's how hard it is. I'll do it again. I'm hitting F12 to go back, revert back to the original image. This is my action panel over here. This is the action. I call it 0.25 enter because it's 0.25 inches and it's the inner line around the mat. I'm just going to hit this play. It's going to play that action and it's going to make the mat. Now, the judges will always say, once they look at the image that pops up, they're going to start, their eyes are going to wander around and they're going to say, I like the image, but the presentation doesn't complement it, or my eyes are wandering out, or the presentation is the mat's distracting. So you don't want your mat to become a part of the conversation. If it does, you're usually on the losing end of that battle. So what you do is where this is landed is on this layer 2. I'm going to go to the brush tool, hold down my Alt key or Option on a Mac, and just pick this color of the clouds. And you'll notice over here that it's chosen that color and shown it on the swatch. So I want to be in a position on layer 2. If I go up to, let's see, I never do it this way. Fill, click on fill, and I want to fill it with the foreground color. This is the foreground color. Right now, white's the background color. And I'll say okay. So there you go. Now I want to fill this layer with the same color. I do this, edit, fill, foreground color. Now you still got your white line around here. That's controlled by the stroke. I can cut it on and off by this operating as eyeball. Okay, I'm going to tell you that from my experience, this is way too saturated. So what I do is I always put a hue saturation layer over top of this. That way I can go in and make adjustments. By clicking on this, I can take the saturation down like that. Maybe right there. Now it's too light. So I'm going to take the lightness down. Maybe like that. To me, I find that appealing because it matches the color of the scene. It's not obtrusive. It's not distracting. It kind of holds you in. The key line is always up for debate depending on what kind of judge you have. Some judges, Joe likes it wider. I like it narrower, but the judge will tell you what they like. And here's how you control it. You click on this, opens this up. My key line is 2 pixels wide. And I've got the opacity set at 51. That's about what I normally do. If it's not bright enough, you just move the opacity over and it makes it whiter. And
generally the key line is supposed to be on the inside, right?
What right here, a position inside, yeah. And you can put it on the outside, you can't tell the difference when you're doing this kind of mat.
But if you do it with it right around the image, I think it's right, it's supposed to be on the inside, I believe.
Yes, I can put another key line around the image by doing this. I just click on this layer, double click on it, right click on it rather, go to blending options and click on stroke. And now I've got a stroke around here and you can see it. by making it brighter. You can see I had double strokes.
Can you make it a little bit bigger so that we can see it, please?
Sure. Let's see. I highlight it and go up arrow that makes it bigger.
They're just like, yeah, there you go.
Okay, I want to accept that. I'll go down here to this stroke. And I'll make this one a little bit wider. I've got a lower opacity. I can bring the opacity up. And now it's way too wide. I don't recommend doing this. This is just for your entertainment.
I think it's 3 to 6 pixels is what Joe shared about.
That's what he said. And yeah, and I normally put mine at 2, but there you go. I mean, like I say, it's all a matter of taste.
Yeah, it's all a matter of taste. I think the biggest thing is, what you see so much in competition, is if you decide, like, see the white line that Jay has, the stroke line right around the image, that so many people will pick a color, say a blue color, and then it will bleed into the image. So
Right.
if you want to put your stroke line right on that image, then you need to pick a color that's got good separation all around the image and it doesn't bleed, and so for that reason, I usually use the style that Jay has and put the stroke layer on its own separate layer. That way I can change the opacity and colors and everything.
Right. You can go to your stroke layer, like Joe's saying here, right click on that and then go to create layer. And now your stroke is on a different layer. But that's a little bit more advanced. I don't want to confuse people with too many options. I'm going to tell you this. I'm going to go revert back. I'm going to hit F12 and take this thing back like it was. If you keep it simple when you're beginning, it'll go easier for you. Just pick your action, and I'm going to run that. And then just once again change the color, and you go to your brush tool. You can go to your eyedropper. I just use brush tool, hold down the Alt or Option key and pick a color. This time I'll pick this color. Okay, while I've got it there, I'm going to fill it, edit, fill, foreground layer. You can also I always do this. I just use a shortcut. I just use Alt Delete and it'll fill this one. That's all you have to do. But I don't want to get into too many shortcuts and confuse everybody. Now there it is. To me, it's oversaturated. So I would go again to this, the hue saturation layer, and back the saturation down, back to the lightness down some. There you go. Now it's not, before it was like, it's too bright, it's drawing your eyes out of the picture. I would advise against going, some people will take this color right here for the key line. They'll pick that. And you can do that by going to your stroke. Color, and pick that right there. And you can see it's showing up. All right, there we go. So that's the color of my stroke. The only problem with that is it's not bright enough. You can't even see it. Let me try it. Okay. Take the opacity up and maybe take it just a little bit wider. And you can see that that's a color. To me, a judge would look at that and say the presentation is great. The key line's too bright and it's distracting. And I've been told everything.
Hey,
Well, we
Jay,
gotta find something to pick on, right?
Jay,
You're right,
quick
Jay.
question for you.
Okay.
If this takes too much time, let me know, but, and I know you're great with the actions. I've seen. Can you do one without an actions? In other words, do it from start to finish? Well, it's not start to
Sure.
finish.
I
but
just made this one just before we started.
Yeah, do it without the action,
Okay.
please.
All right.
Thank you.
And Jay, Paula asked, and I think everybody would like it, if you would be able to share that action with everybody, would you?
Sure, absolutely. All I ask is that you don't give it to anybody that's not a professional photographer, a member of a professional organization. That's all. I mean, I'll give it to you. I don't care, but I'll show you how easy it is to do. Can I put it in the chat? Will it work that way?
You can if you want to.
Okay, let me, right now, I guess I can't do it right now, but when we get back, remind me when I give it back, and I'll put it in the chat for you.
No
Here's how
worries.
you make an action. You go over to, click on actions, go up here. Get off of that, go up here.
Jay,
New
excuse me, I didn't mean how to make an action, but how to do the actual border.
Oh, I was gonna make an action while I do, okay, I don't have to make.
Okay,
Actually,
Okay,
Jay,
thank you.
go ahead and do what you're doing, because for
Okay.
those of us who don't know how to create an action, that would be good to go
Okay.
from the beginning. Yes, so
All
that's
right, so we've clicked the action tab over here. Now we go up here to this thing they call, some people call it a hamburger. 3 layers, click on that, and we're gonna click new action. And it's gonna go in the set I just made called Matt for MDPPA webinar. That's a set I built before we started. And I want to name this, I want to make it just a little bit different. I'm gonna name this 0.5 enter.
you can name it anything you guys want so that you'll
name it.
remember.
That's right,
Your
it's just a name I
your
picked.
stroke, your not.
The reason I did that, it's because it's a size it's gonna be from the inside.
Right.
Record. The first thing I do in any action is hit the letter D to reset the colors to black and white. Letter D, there we go. And that's recorded up here. You'll notice it reset swatches. That's recorded. I'm going to unlock this layer. I'm going to hold my command or control key down and add a new layer below it. I'm going to resize this layer to 0.5. So I'm going to go to, let's see, I always use shortcuts. Let me see, it's image, canvas size. I use Control-Alt-C. And I'm going to make it 0.5 inches. Make sure it's on inches. 0.5 inches and have relative checked and say, okay. There it is. Now you've got this around it. Now what I want to do is fill this with a foreground color. I can go up here and go edit, fill foreground. It's going to fill it with black. And I'm going to lock the layer in case I want to put a different color. I just lock the layer like this, waiting, lock the transparent pixels. That's what I did. That's only transparent pixels. Now I'm going to add another layer below that. I'm going to go Command or Control, new layer. I'm going to resize it. I'm going to go to Image, Canvas Sizer. Again, I've struggled because I always use shortcuts. I want to make this 4 inches, 4 inches relative. Okay, there it is. I'm going to fill it with black, edit, fill, foreground color. Okay. Now I'm going to go up here and put a hue saturation layer on it. It's clips to it. I want to unclip it, so I'm going to, I think you unclip it here. I always use a shortcut. I'm going to cheat. I'm going to show you a shortcut. Hold your Alt key down or Alt option and click that. Whoops. What's supposed to happen? There we go. Now, now we'll put a stroke around this. Highlight that layer. Right click, blending options, stroke, click beside it, not the check mark, click beside it. Pick your color. We're going to pick white. Let's go down here with it. Okay, and I've got it set to 251. That's my default settings. And I'm going to say, okay. And going down here to this layer. And when I get down here, I'm going to stop recording. So I'll go up here and push this. Now it stopped recording. So now I'm going to hit F12, which is the same thing as going up here to File, Revert. It takes the image back to the native. Okay, now I'm going to go to that action I just made. And I'm going to play it. This is like the play thing on a tape recorder. Click it. And there it is. That's what I just did. So anytime I want to do that, that's all I do is click that and it's made the mat for me. Then
That's,
I-
that's
then I-
excellent, Jay. Thank you.
Sure, then I would go back again, pick the color here, go to your brush. We'll still pick the color. We'll pick this color, fill it, go here, fill it. And then go up here and I got to use saturation. That's okay. We'll click this, get that out of the way. Bring the lightness down, the saturation down. And you're done. Okay, one more thing I want to show you. The last thing you have to do for competition is size it for competition. It's so easy. First, we're going to flatten the image. You can see, I even got a command for that. Let's see. How do you do it here? I don't even know how you do it here. I'm going to flatten the image. Okay, there you go. That's my shortcut. Next thing we do is make the image the proper size. The proper size for image competition, you go to image size, Control-Alt-I, and make sure this is set on pixels. And the resolution is going to be 200. That's a requirement for competition. So, and make sure you got resample check. Change the resolution to 200. Take the longest side, which in this case is a width, make it 4,000. Click OK. And then you're going to save it. So I go save as. And let's see, I would call this comp size. I type today. Save it, and then when you save it as 10. There you go. It's ready to go for competition. I would give it a 74.
You're being too harsh on yourself there, Mr. I give you a 100 for this demo. I think people are liking it as well. And so good job. So so I wanted to address something that Stephen mentioned in the chat. He said that the images need to be, the mat used to be 16 by 20. It is no longer that anymore. As long as if your longest edge is at the 4,000 pixels, then you can do any shape you like. So it is no longer 16 by 20 and has to fit in that. It used to be, but thankfully now we don't have to worry about it. So good job. And one thing I want to add to Jay, just like this is his method of doing this, there's a bazillion other ways to do it. And Chris Paul has shared with me a link of how he does his as well. I am going to put that link in the group chat. He said, feel free to share it with members. You guys can look, PPA has a great topic or a couple of videos on how to do it again. Other people, like I said, everybody does it differently. And so pick what works for you. This was great. And creating an action does really make a big difference in your workflow. So I am going to share Chris Paulus's video as well. And Chris, if you're here today, he is. If you're here, thank you very much for sharing that with us. All right.
Welcome.
Thank you.
And Jay, I'm not sure if you can actually upload the action to the chat.
I just tried it. I can't.
Yeah, I don't think there's any way to do an attachment. Could everybody?
Email it to.
I will put it on Maryland PPA website. You can download it from there.
Okay.
And what you do, all you have to do is if you have Photoshop on, if you double click that action, it'll automatically load as a last action on your list in Photoshop.
Well, thank you. Does anybody else have any? That was great, Jay.
That was great.
I just realized how much time that's going to save me. So, so the other thing I just kind of wanted to add about that, and you guys can kind of correct me if you see it differently, but that's Jay's kind of standard. It doesn't have to be. Sometimes like a wider map might look good. Sometimes a more narrow map might look good. So, but that's like, it's a really good starting point. I think just to kind of start with kind of 2 inches all the way around, and you'll know when you look at it. So
By the
Um,
way, Ellen, that can be changed once you get that 2 inches all the way around it. All you have to do is go into canvas size, and you can add on canvas size on the outside or subtract. If it's too
Yep.
big, you can go -1.
Right. Yeah, it's such a, I mean, it's such a great start, and it might be the end, and it might just be something you modify a little bit. So thank you. Okay, so
Any
kind of still
questions
sticking
before we
with,
move on to the next topic?
pardon me?
Any questions to Jay before we move on to the next topic? Looks good? Okay. We're good.
So Lydia is going to talk about, and this is specific to MDPPA, images that you can and can't enter.
Well, I don't have a cool demonstration like Jay did, but I can say this much. I've actually been getting a lot of questions about how many images we can enter, and it is 23. So this one up this year for the reason that we added the reportage category, and we didn't want to penalize people who want to enter more. So you can enter up to 23 images, and 8 in each category is the maximum. So you're going to notice also for the annual, I'm just going to talk about that a little bit, and then we'll go on and talk about the other sets of rules and expectations. So 23 images, 8 per category. And for the annual, because we give out different trophies at the end of the competition, we thought it would be easier for us to split up into subcategories. That way we can pull them up easier and be able to have the judges look at them and judge them faster. So you're going to notice, like, for example, illustrative best nature and illustrative general. You're going to notice portrait will have
Child,
of a pet, child, and I think that's it. Child
and general, yep.
portrait and general, and then that's it. Those are the subcategories that you're going to see. In the artist category, you're going to see artist and restoration. So that doesn't mean you get 8 images in portrait child and 8 images in portrait pet. That means between the two of them, between all of the portrait, you're allowed 8. So it's still within the portrait category. So please only enter 8 in the portrait category, 8 in the illustrative, and or 8 in the artist, or you can mix and match any combination you want, up to 23 images and the maximum of 8 in any one category. All right, so let's talk about other images that you cannot enter or can enter with a caveat. So previously merited images, that's when we get a lot of questions about. What is a previously merited image? Anything that has scored an, okay, so let me back up a little bit for those of you who have not entered print competitions before. We have our quarterly print competitions at the MDPPA level. We have the quarterly print competitions, and we have the annual print competition. What's coming up later on this month is our annual print competition. And what that is basically everything that you've worked on and you've practiced and you've listened to feedback and you want to perfect it and you feel like, okay, this is ready to go further to IPC and districts. Let me enter it at the annual competition and see how it does. Plus, you will have a chance to be awarded individually on each image that could potentially earn an award. So what's coming up is our annual competition. And what I just said about the categories is really specific to the annual competition. The previously merited images during our quarterly competitions are allowed to come back to the annual competition and be entered for the next level of judging if you wish. Previously merited images,
As long as they haven't merited it districts or IPC. In that case, they're out completely.
right. So hang on a second. All right. So if the image previously merited at our competition, at our annual or IPC or district, you cannot bring them back for an award. And that is really what I want to emphasize, is for an award. You can bring them back for score only. So I've been getting a lot of questions, like, for example, my image that merited really well at the annual at MDPPA, did very well at MDPPA, send it to districts and annual, it did not merit. Can I bring it back and have it rejudged? I've done a lot of work. I've tweaked it. I've done a lot of work to it. I want to see how it's going to do. Can I bring it back? Yes, you can bring it back, but you can bring it back for score only. So you need to put a parentheses right after the title, parentheses, score only, so that Ellen and I would know that this is for score only and it's not going to be eligible for awards. And the reason why we decided to do that is we hear from a lot of people that we've done a lot of work and we want to hear the feedback, and it's important for us. And sometimes even if it goes past IPC and districts, a lot of you will continue to work on an image. Maybe you want to enter it at a different competition altogether that is not PPA related, or it's going to print somewhere and you didn't like the way it printed, but you want to try it out again and see if the new improvements worked or not. Fine, no problem. You can enter anything that's been previously merited, but just make sure you include score only, because then we'll know that that image will not be eligible for awards. And for those of you who are wondering, how will they know? We know. We spend a little bit of time, we don't police everything, but we spend a little bit of time looking at previous, especially if an image is like, images sometimes jump out at us. We look at them so much in preparation to the competition. So we'll kind of start recognizing something like, wait a minute, does that look familiar? And we'll do a quick look. And if it does look familiar and we call you and say, this has this has merited, it's no longer eligible for an award. Are you okay with it being score only? Please understand that we're coming from a good place and we're not meaning to pick on you. Does that, anybody has questions about what I just said? All right, good. Previously merited score only. All right, with that, I also want to address the specific categories of where you can enter images. I've also been getting a lot of questions about the Maryland category and how many images. In the past, we used to do one image for Maryland, and that is no longer the case. You can actually enter 8 images in the Maryland category, and that is only for during our annual competition. So the Maryland category is really unique to the state of Maryland, or MDPPA, and what we're looking for are images that showcase the state of Maryland. It could be anything you want, as long as if it showcases the state of Maryland. What we do ask of you is to provide us with the location of where it was shot. So again, after the title, just put parentheses and the location. We will not read that, and we will not read score only either. It's just for us to verify that that location was in Maryland, in case if it needs to be verified. Did I answer your question, Stephen? You had a question about Maryland category, or was there something more specific? Okay, so I have a question in the chat about, I haven't been putting images in the quarterly, the yearly judge steeper. Sometimes, did you have a question for me, Stephen or Ted?
I do, yes.
Go ahead.
So what's the advantage of entering in the Maryland category over just the general category, illustrated?
Okay, good question. Very good question. We actually have a trophy designated for best image that represents Maryland category. So if you don't want to enter it, if you're looking for a trophy or potentially being a contender, that would be probably your only benefit, other than to see how the image, because they're going to be judged the same. When the judges look at the images, they're going to judge them based on the 12 elements of design, and it's not going to be judged any differently because it's the state of Maryland images. So, and they honestly will not know, because we're going to put them in the open category and they're going to all be judged together. But when we go into closed judging, we will pull that category out and we will let the judges know that these are images that represent the state of Maryland. If they know what Maryland is all about, or if they understand it, they will look at it and judge it accordingly. And quite honestly, sometimes when we get judges from out of state, they have no clue what they're looking at, and we try to help them as best as we can without influencing their decisions. Like when we start seeing a lot of crabs or Maryland blue crabs or sunflowers, or not sunflowers, black-eyed Susans, they may not understand the significance of it, so we try to explain that to them if we can. So the difference is during our annual, it's another opportunity for the makers to earn an award for the Maryland category. But yes,
And-
if you feel that your image is better suited in illustrative, or you'd like to do that, that's absolutely great.
And part of this goes back a ways where we were limited in the annual to 4 images in a case. And then if you wanted to enter an additional one in Maryland, you could. So it kind of got 5. So I think right now it's really everything that Lydia said, plus it kind of, you can win an award for the best Maryland image. Does that answer your question, Ted?
Almost, almost.
Almost?
So, so I can enter 8 images in Maryland. Can I enter another 8 interests in illustrative general?
Yes.
Ah, okay. That's the advantage.
So there you have it. You could do both.
So, but the images that you, well, that's actually interesting. So
But not
Lydia.
the same images.
not the same, but so let's just say that they're all images that would fit in the illustrative category. Would those all 16, if let's just say they all merit, would they all get judged for best illustrative image? That's a good, we're gonna have to get back to you on that one.
Well, yes, they would. If,
Hey, Lydia,
yes,
Well, I got my answer.
I'm just going from past years. Are the Maryland images that are entered in the Maryland category, are those also eligible for sweepstakes? Because at one time they were not.
I have to look. I do have to look at, I have to look at that. I don't remember seeing anything.
Yeah, I remember we had that rule, but that was years ago.
Yeah,
And they could
I
have
don't
changed.
remember.
So what is sweepstakes?
Okay, well, let me talk about awards in just a second. Let me just get back to this one here. I don't know, Joe, if it does or not, but I will look at that and see if Maryland is included or excluded in this. I don't honestly recall anything that says excluded out of the sweepstakes.
So we might have to get back to you all on this. But Wallace, you had a question. Was it answered about, is the judging from the quarterly and the annual different? Was that question answered for you?
No, I have not answered that one, but let me get to that one for just a second. Let me talk a little bit about awarding and trophies and what is the sweepstake, if you don't mind, since that just came up. So there's different ways to earn awards. One being that when you compete in the quarterly competitions, that you will accumulate, it's not based on points anymore. It's based on the average scores of your top, this year it's the top 6 merited images. We're going to drop it down to 4 next year because we're going down to 2 image competitions and 1 annual. So we will take the top 6 merited images. This is again based on what happened for 2021 that will be awarded into 2022. Your 6 top merited images, and the person with the highest average of those numbers will win the photographer of the year in that one category. So if it's illustrative, you'll win best or photographer of the year in the illustrative category, photographer of the year in the wedding, photographer of the year portrait, photographer of the year artist, and so on. So that's one way to earn awards if you do not compete in the annual. Now, during our annual competition, the awarding is really standalone to that one competition only. So you will have an opportunity to earn best in category. So best illustrative, best portrait, best artist. We have a best restoration trophy coming on this year. So the restoration artist, please make sure you enter those. So we're adding that one. We're also adding a best reportage as well. So that's coming new for us as well. And then there's the subcategories. So this is what we talked about earlier, why we divided the categories up a little bit. So you'll have an opportunity to earn a best portrait, best black and white, best nature, best pet, best illustrative overall, most creative image, best artist, And then we have our memorial awards, which are named awards. Best commercial, I think it's, I can't remember them all right now off the top.
All of them are listed on the web. Instead of you going through kind of everything,
Right.
they're all on the website.
Correct. And then we have the sweepstakes award. So there's two different sweepstakes award, one that we give out during the annual. And basically what that is a combination of your top merited images. So we take your top merited images, we look at them for every single entrant, and we look at who has the highest average, and that one individual will earn the sweepstakes award. So that's how that's looked at. Now, the one for the annual, which is our quarterlies, we also look at makers who have entered in and merited in 3 different categories. And then we take the averages and average those out and come up with the maker with the highest scores. It's very confusing to talk about it, and it's very confusing for us to sit there and process it. So yes, there are awards to be won, and a lot of you are motivated by awards, which we love, and that's awesome. Do go ahead and compete. And a lot of you are motivated by the Green Dollar Awards, which is neat. I like earning those too, because that's what my clients pay me with. So whatever your motivation is to want to improve and do better, go for it. All of this information that we're talking about is in 2 separate places at the moment. One, it's in our rules. Please read our rules. It has a lot of good information, and it's really written in a very simple way, and it's not so mathematical. And then the other place that you can find it is under the ins and outs of the print competition, which is what Ellen referred to. It's on the Maryland, the MDPPA website, and it's slide by slide that has a little bit more condensed version of our rules. And we talk about all of that. And if you still don't know, or if you're still not sure, give us a call or to email us or what have you, and Ellen and I can go into more details, more specific information.
I just want to make sure that I understand this, which is back to what Ted was asking. If Ted enters, or anybody enters, Ted, I'm not picking on you, but I know where you're going with it, right? So they're all, let's just say, illustrative images, and they're taken in Maryland, and some of them are, some of them aren't, it's irrelevant, but there's 8 in the Maryland category, but they also fit under illustrative. And then there's 8 in the illustrative category. And let's just say they all merit. Are all 16 of those going to be considered for best illustrative image?
No. I'm sorry.
Wait, Ted, that's what you were asking, right?
No, because the Maryland category will be judged separately from the illustrative category in the closed judging. And if you were wondering if they will be best illustrative, no, the only place where they can be judged all together is for the most creative, and the most creative award is from the entire merited collection.
I think it's creative, black and white, and nature, correct? All 3.
Correct.
Okay, but not illustrative.
There are some awards that can be crossed back and forth, and there are awards that pretty much will stop. I think Maryland is one of those awards that will absolutely stop at Best Maryland. And again, it's in our rules. Please go and look at that. So yes, I'm sorry. No, you will not be able to cross between illustrative and Maryland and kind of put the 16 into one category and judge it that way. No. But thank you for clarifying that.
Yeah, so it's you can tell it's overwhelming, I think.
It is very.
But Lydia, do you want to, you kind of started to touch on this. Does anybody have any questions about that? Because it's already 4:15 and we still have a lot more to talk about. So Lydia, can you talk maybe briefly about printcompetition.com? Does anybody have anything quick that they want to ask Lydia about what she just talked about? If not, Lydia, can you started to talk about it a little bit. So can you kind of get into it?
The only thing about printcompetition.com is if you've never entered before, create an account. It's really self-explanatory, and the way it's laid out, it really walks you through everything. The only thing I do want to bring to your attention, because a lot of us still, it's different. There's our deadline. So our early deadline is the 11th, and our late deadline is the 23rd or the 24th.
The 18th. No, the 18th. The competition.
Sorry, the 23rd is our competition. The 18th. Thank you. So basically, in the early deadline, you pay $10, and the late deadline, you pay $15. We encourage you guys to go ahead and put placeholders for the early deadline. What does that mean is you go ahead and you pre-register and you just type in, I'm gonna enter like maybe 5 illustrative. You can title them illustrative 1, illustrative 2, illustrative 3, 4, 5, and go ahead and finalize your docket and pay for it. So if you pay for it, you've created a placeholder in printcompetition.com that lets us know that between now and the late deadline, you are going to enter an image. You can do that. You can tweak it. You can rename it. You can move them from categories. You could do whatever you like to that effect. So just go ahead and put your placeholders. And again, you don't need to put in a thumbnail or some image. Just enter them, title them whatever you want. You can change all of that up to the late deadline. Any questions about that? I just posted a YouTube video. Jay just posted a YouTube video on Facebook. So that's the only thing I'm going to tell you differently about printcompetition.com. And if you do that by the 11th, you're going to save yourself some money from having to pay the late fee.
But if you don't, I just feel compelled to point that out.
If you don't, you're going to pay the late fee. The other thing is, please don't do this to us because we will not refund you. If you like put 10 placeholders and you decide at the last minute you're going to only enter 9, consider it a donation. We can't refund you. I'm sorry. There was a comment about the print competition being steeper at the annual versus our quarterlies. Typically in the past, we've done 3 judges for the quarterlies, and annual is a full panel of 5 judges and a jury chair. You know, it is very subjective. The panel is very subjective. It depends on the, and I think Jay will talk maybe a little bit more about that. Yes, when we have more judges, yes, they're going to be a little bit more diverse and different. We're looking at improving and doing all of our competitions up to 5 judges, but we're still waiting for approvals on that one. And again, every competition is going to be a little bit different. So it depends on the panel. It depends on a lot of variables, you guys. Okay. If no questions, I'm going to turn it over to Jay to talk about the other stuff.
Okay, real quick, I just posted a video that we made during a collaborative work day. I posted on Maryland PPA's website, the private work one for everybody. You're welcome to watch that. It shows you how I made the mat. Same thing I did today. It's just a different recording. And also I posted the mat action. All you have to do is click that. It'll download and load up on your Photoshop, and you're ready to go.
Thank
Okay.
you, Jay. You're
You're
awesome.
welcome.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And if anybody needs any help with any of it, contact me. I'll be glad to help you.
Thank you.
Okay, we were talking about, well, scoring's different now in Maryland than it's going to be for district and for IPC. We're still going to give them numeric scores. Is that correct, ladies?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. In IPC at district, you're only going to get a merit or no merit on the first round at IPC. Then you'll get a loan or no loan, or a image excellence or no excellence. You're going to hear the judges talk about challenging. There's an automatic challenge that you don't see that often. And I haven't seen one in a long time. It's when one judge is like, or a couple of judges are 10 points off from what everybody else is. That'll call for an automatic challenge. Is that right, Alan?
It's an automatic challenge is if one judge's score is 10 points lower or higher than the total score.
Right.
So if the image, let's just say, overall scored a 95 and someone scored it a 79, it would be an automatic challenge.
Right. Same thing. If you get 3 98s and or 2 98s and 3 100s, that draws an automatic challenge too, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I've never had 100, so I don't know.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't know about. We could ask Joe that one, but I've never. Yeah. So yeah. So I think the one that you kind of see most often really is the judge's challenge.
Right. The judge's challenge is when the judges that look at you have 3 judges that are 82, and you have 2 judges. One's an 86, one's an 88, and the guys that are in the 88, they want to bring it up above up to an 85 at least, because it should go up in the excellent category, just above the merit category. So they'll challenge it, try to bring the other judges up with them. But in so doing, the judges that saw they scored at 82 may find something that would bring the other judges back down to 80 or 82, or perhaps even down to a 79. So it can work for you or against you. That's a judge's challenge. You'll get to hear the
And-
judges debate the merits of the image and the flaws of the image. And that's the greatest, that's when you learn, when you listen to that. Usually when the judges start talking, your score goes down. I found that out. I had one at IPC get challenged from a merit to a no merit a couple years ago. That does break your heart.
A lot of times, I just could not to discourage people. A lot of times it does go up, but like Jay's saying, when they discuss it, they can find flaws, but you'll also hear judges say, oh, I totally missed the image. I don't know why I didn't see how perfect it was, right? Or
here's what I want to tell you, and Carl Kaler addresses that well. If you look at the rules that he goes over, if the judge, you want the judge to get up out of their seat with impact. Say, oh my God, I heard one at IPC this year. The juror chair says, I want that on my wall. When he said that, I mean, the other judges, they're right up with their nose on the screen. I mean, you got to look at that. And I actually went on my wall too. It was that good. But you do that by having an impactful image with all of the 12 elements of a merit image are hit. Plus, it's done in a good way. There's no technical flaws in it, and the judges will really look at it and score it well. And you can, if you have an image that people don't get, you're in trouble. You can have the judges get what your image is saying by giving it the proper title. If you're doing a portrait, you need to look at if the eyes aren't looking at the camera, if they're looking at something else, you have to be able to explain that with a title. And you have to be able to explain the body language with a title. You have to be able to explain the color or the black and white or the wardrobe. All of that has to be expressed very quickly in a perfectly named title. And I work on titles. Sometimes I spend hours. I'll ask my wife, I'll ask friends, what would you call this? And sometimes I'll ask other photographers, and you get some good advice.
one of my friends also, speaking of titles, can't remember, I can message her. She has a group on Facebook. She's the print chair for Ohio, called like Name That Print or something like that. And it's an open group. So I'll find out what it's called and let you guys know. And you can post an image and just ask for feedback on titles.
As far as, while I'm talking about titles, I made this note. Don't insult a judge with a stupid title. Don't insult them. Foreign languages, lots of times the person that's a jury chair can't pronounce it. I know I couldn't if it was French. You might as well put it in Arabic, because I couldn't read that either. Also, a title like Little Boy Blue, I don't know how many times an image has been named Little Boy Blue, and the judges are going, oh, geez, not another Little Boy Blue.
Or offensive titles. Please, guys, make sure. I mean, understand that we're all very artistic people, but if the title is offensive for you to say it at church, please don't make us read it.
Right. And one other thing, when you're getting judged and your image doesn't do as well as you wanted it to, remember, you only have control over your image. Because I have some people say, well, that image I saw 3 images ago was a piece of crap and it got an 82 and mine got a 78. Well, you only have control over your own image. You don't have control over anybody else's, because sometimes you wonder, you say, what did the judge see? Well, they see things that you didn't see, obviously. Here's a couple of tips for you. Turn your image upside down and look at it, especially if it's a portrait, and look at where your eyes go. If your eyes are going to the hand, the shoulder, or a reflection on the chair, your portrait's not going to score well, because your eyes should go to the portrait's face or to the eyes of the portrait. And also remember that different panels, different jury panels, if you enter it in one place and you score an 82, you might enter it in another place and score 88. That's because they're different people, and different people view things in different ways. Plus, you can get one advocate for your image on a jury panel and can promote the thing way up. He'll say, I don't know what the rest of you folks are looking at, but just look at what he's done with this lady's hair, or look at the eyes, look at the horse, how beautiful the horse is. And all of a sudden, everybody else starts agreeing with him and your score goes up. Let's see what else. I do everything I can do to improve my image quality. I enter images in print competitions all over the United States all year round in different affiliates: New Mexico, Arizona, Iowa, Nebraska, the Ozarks, Connecticut, Virginia, Pennsylvania. I go through all of them. Anybody that'll accept a non-member image, I'll enter it, and I'll get the critique on it. If I see the image is going to bomb out, I don't enter it anymore. I just say, okay, it's a bad image. My bad. I just won't do that anymore. Let's see if there's anything else. The other thing I did was I took the jurors workshop. I went to Atlanta, Georgia, I think in 2018. All of the IPC jurors have to do that at one time or the other. I'm not an IPC juror. I wasn't even a master photographer when I went, but I wanted to go to increase my quality of my images, and it helped. Believe me, I sat there on jury panels with other jurors that were master photographers, and even the IPC judges came in with us and judged because they were doing IPC at the time, and it was an awakening for me. I'm getting older, and I didn't have a whole lot of time to get my master's, so I decided I was going to put the pedal to the metal. So I did all these things to improve my image quality, and it paid off. Finally, I got my master's this year at imaging. So nothing helps you any more than entering print competition. I'll tell you that.
And if anybody is interested, I believe the judges workshop is open to anybody who wants to attend. It's actually online this year. It's March 21st through 23rd. I think it's either $495 or $595. I can't remember.
It's $595. It's
$595, but it's online, and so it's cheaper than flying to Georgia. If Lydia and I would do it, but we'd already had the print competition scheduled for the 23rd, so we can't. Jay, did you have anything else you wanted to add, or does anybody have any questions for Jay? All right. I'll tell it just a quick story before Lydia talks about kind of what happens after print competition. I think we've touched on it a lot already, but I joined MDPPA and I'd never entered print competition before. And like a lot of people were doing it, and they were, you get excited. You're like, oh, I'm going to enter. And, when you first start as a photographer, you think you're awesome. And then the more you shoot, the worse you think you are, which is ironic because you're getting better. I didn't think I was awesome, but I was like, all right, I have some images that I'm going to try. So I entered them, and I had no idea like what to expect. And I had like stress dreams the night before that my images scored like a 17. I still remember that. It was awful. The lowest score I think you're allowed to give is like a 69. I don't think I've ever seen anything lower than that. And I think I can count the number of times I've seen that maybe on one hand, but oh my God, it was awful. So anyway, moving right along. So we've talked about kind of getting ready for print competition. We've talked about kind of how print competition works. Now your images have been judged, and what do you do next? And we've touched on this some. Lydia, this is you.
It's me. So what do you do next? Okay. After you're done crying or celebrating, whichever your preferred method, drinking is good for either. Then you have an option to order a critique. So to order a critique, you can either do it when you register at printcompetition.com, or you can wait for up to 3 days past and you can order a critique. Just go onto printcompetition.com, order a critique, and that's all you have to do. It's $10. And what that does, it will get your image in front of a judge that will look at it and give you a really good in-depth critique. They're about 3 to 5 minutes long. Sometimes they'll drag on for 8 or 10 minutes, which is awesome if they're really passionate about it and they really want you to know, they will. And they give you a little video, and they they record the screen, and they'll take their little pointer and mark different things and show you what you need to do. So you can do that. It does take about a couple of weeks, sometimes 3 weeks. It depends on where the judges are. If there's other judging happening, like big judging happening, sometimes they're delayed. And so when they get them back to us, Ellen and I will put them into Dropbox folders and share the links with you so that you guys can learn and benefit from it. What does that mean?
Wait, Lydia, hang on. We don't share them with everybody. We just share them with the maker.
Individually,
Yeah,
yes.
I just
Individually.
clarifying,
Thank you.
that's all.
Um,
Yeah.
We've talked a lot about getting critiques and feedback from people and what you do with it. Honestly, you can do absolutely nothing and say, I like the image the way it is, and your opinion is not valid to me, and that's absolutely fine. That's your opinion, and you're entitled to it. Or you can say, you know, what Joe did, give it a shot, give it a try, see if it makes a difference or not. Send the newly revised image to a friend. Hey, what do you think? Sometimes I personally like to send out like the before and after. Here's where I started, here's where I finished. What do you think? A fresh pair of eyes would really help in identifying what worked and what didn't work. Sometimes just coming and revisiting on a completely different day. We're very creative people, and we're mood driven. Sometimes we're just not looking at things very creatively, and we need to step away, and it's good to step away and just come back. And I do that all the time. I'll work on something and come back the next day. I'm like, how did I miss this big blob sitting in the middle? And then you go back and you enter it in more competitions. So at the Maryland level, we are kind of like the beginning journey, or any state level competition. We're like your beginning of your journey. This is where you're testing out the waters. We give you 3-4 opportunities throughout the year to kind of take a look and test the image, see how it's going to do. Send it out to other competitions if the timing doesn't work for you. We've tried really hard to kind of match our timing to kind of be just slightly before IPC and districts, so that you'll have these feedbacks right before the 2 big competitions that are moving further. So come back and bring it back. If it doesn't merit, work on it, bring it back. And if it bombs everywhere else, you guys just cut your losses and say, I'm going to go out and do something different. It is okay. It is absolutely okay. Like, I've had a wedding image that I've been playing around with for 2 years, and it just barely squeaked an 80 one time. So you know what? Is it going to do better at IPC? Absolutely not. It's been sitting at that 79, 80, and I've tweaked it, and it's fine to say, you know what? I'm going to move on. I'm going to go out there and I'm going to shoot the next wedding. I'm whatever. The next client you have, carve 5 minutes out of your shoot to do something that you love and you think would be competition worthy, or just go out and shoot new nature images. Sometimes people dig in their archives, that's fine, but I find myself digging in my archives. I'm just fixing previous mistakes. I'd rather go out and shoot with new knowledge or make new mistakes. Personally, for me, that's more rewarding and educational for me to go out and challenge myself on a new project. So that's your choice. Learning from your feedbacks, previous mistakes, previous whatever is good. Just go out and keep going, keep practicing, keep doing. I remember, Ellen, when you joined and when you were competing, and I remember after so many non-merited images, she was just frustrated. I remember when you were ready to like throw in the towel and give up. And I'm like, and we hear it a lot. Trust me, almost every single person that is where they are now with competition and really consistently getting merited images were in this place where they were just done. They were going to give up because it just wasn't working. And somehow one day you're going to wake up and that light bulb is going to come on and you're like, I get it. I understand what they're looking for. And the next set of images that you're going to move forward with, they're going to be your next merited images. And then there's the steps. You go from merits to higher scores to image excellence to the World Cup. Sky is the limit, you guys. And so the only way you're going to achieve that is through persevering through those tough times and getting through them. And you will get through them. It might take 3 competitions or it might take 2 years of competitions, but keep at it. Don't give up, especially if that's something that you want to see yourself grow in. And we talked a little bit about trophies. You know, the trophies are wonderful. There's plenty of them sitting downstairs. They speak for me and they speak for the quality of the work that I do. When my clients come in and look at them, like I could see their wheels spin. It's like, oh my gosh, she really knows her stuff. And that's beautiful to have. And it's beautiful to display. And I am proud of them. I will talk about them. We won't talk about Joe's trophy case because one day I will own one just as big as yours, Joe. But they're beautiful to have. But also at the end of the day, guys, remember you're doing this to better yourself, better serve your clients. And if trophies are good for you, then great. But don't lead with the trophy. The trophy is a nice physical reward, but honestly, the knowledge that I've earned from the nose and the 78s and 79s and anything below that, it carried me forward in my professional career, and I love it. So a no is just as good as a trophy in my book, or a 70, whatever, 69, whatever, because it's really your drive forward. And so we want to leave you with, yes, it's going to be a journey, and everybody's journey is going to look different, but keep working at it. And you've got a great support system here at Maryland. I can assure you, every person in this organization, if you reach out to them with a question or, hey, I need help with something, they will be more than happy to help you. So we get questions all the time, and I have some entrants that will call me. We're friends, and they understand if they call me, they want my opinion. It's my personal opinion. And you do what you wish with it. And I can guarantee you, anybody sitting here will at least give you their opinion or look at it with another fresh pair of eyes. All right, questions. Did I miss anything, Ellen?
The only thing I wanted to add was just kind of another way to learn is if you are a premium member of printcompetition.com, you can look in the archives and you can narrow your search by images that have audio, which means they have a discussion. So they had a challenge, they had something. So that's kind of another, you know, I think printcompetition.com is like $16 a month, and that's great education. So
A quarter, I think.
Quarter, not a month.
I'm sorry, a quarter. That was what I meant. Sorry. Thank you.
Oh, so Joe said he moved 16 boxes of trophies to Florida. Yeah, I'm not there yet. We'll get there.
But it is true. It does get, it does get frustrating when you know, at least for me, kind of when I started, I was getting a lot of 78s, and then, the first time you get an 80, it's really exciting. And I became a master photographer, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago, maybe. And it's just like it's such an accomplishment. Like it makes you feel good, especially kind of when you start. And Joe, who is probably he's definitely got more trophies than anybody I know. Joe, you said when you first started, because you talked about this on our last time we talked about print competition, when you first started, you weren't getting in the 90s, right? But were you getting 80, like for the most part? Like, where did you start?
My first competition, Ed Pierce was my mentor. If anybody remembers Ed Pierce, had a studio here in Maryland. He got me involved in print competition. And after my first print competition, I went back to him and says, why do I want to do this? I got 76s and 77s. And he says, that's a good starting point. He says, don't get frustrated. And I think that's the clue.
Yeah.
I can still remember my first 80. It was a competition and Monty gave me my first 80. So that was, and it just, I think I've always been a believer, when you jump into competition, don't expect 90s, take it one step at a time, get an 80, then an 85 and an 88. And I still, the problem now with being in it so long is my expectations of myself are a lot higher. And sometimes that gets not realistic sometimes. And it's hard to live up to my own expectations.
But it does make you, everybody says this, and I know it sounds trite, it makes you a better photographer. You look at things differently. Even if you go out and you shoot for competition, it makes, when you go out and you do your client work, you think about things from that perspective, and those images are going to be better.
Right.
So.
Yeah, it teaches you the basics of design and composition, and when you look through that camera to apply those on a day-to-day basis, our basic thing was portrait photography in Maryland. And when we came down here, I switched to nature. But all those basics of composition and design transferred over to my avian and landscape images.
Yeah.
And it also helps fill the gaps, like the learning gaps that you may have, because you may realize while working on an image that you're lacking something in Photoshop. So I often find myself working on an image like leaving and going on a tangent and kind of looking up, how do I do a better job in zit removal? Because if I'm going to have to sit there and take out every little zit and spend, 10 hours doing that, is there a faster way to do something? So I find myself leaving an image, going to do that and come back, and all of a sudden it makes sense and I can zip through something faster. So for me, being forced to enter print competition and being able to meet those deadlines has forced me to kind of learn more and fill those gaps, the learning gaps that I have. One thing I
And-
want to say before we wrap up, if you're actively shooting and you have like customer jobs and projects, kind of put a little folder somewhere on your computer, and like any image that comes through that you think is worthy, just stick it in there. I wish I took that advice earlier, because now I do that now, but in the past I was like, oh, that wedding that I shot 3 years ago, I thought there was something good in it. Let me go back and dig through 3,000 images later to find that one. So as you're editing,
Yeah, that's
something you like, stick it in a competition potential folder or something.
Yeah, that's great advice. I always have an active file, in my work in progress folder that, things I'm thinking about entering competition, or maybe an effect I saw that somebody posted on Facebook, and I'll drag it in and say, I need to do that next time I'm out.
Yeah. And
That
I
way
also
you're
have
not
an
scourging.
inspiration folder. So those are nice too. Like these are my inspiration folders. So when I go out, I have access on my phone. I'll be like, ooh, this is something I want to try today, and I'll go out shoot with purpose.
Does
All right.
anybody have any other questions for us or comments, and feel free to reach out to me or Lydia if you have any questions about how to enter print competition. And like everybody here offered, I think lots of people are kind of willing to give feedback and advice, but if you have kind of more the ins and outs of like, how do I upload or what category or anything like that, you can reach either one of us through email or just call.
Yep. No questions? You mean we did it? We covered it?
We talked a lot.
We did talk a lot. Let's see. Let me just double check the chats before I let you guys go to make sure.
I've been checking it. There's
Have
nothing
you?
in there.
Okay.
Jay had a couple recommendations for Pix Imperfect, and you said Gigi O'Day's mats are awesome.
Right.
And Jay, you posted a couple things in the Facebook group. Is that what you said? In the
Right, I've got
MDPPA?
2 things. I've got the mat action I did today, and I also posted a video from one of our collaborative work days from last year or a year or 2 ago, where I did the same thing, but it's a YouTube video showing you step by step how I did it. Just same thing I did today.
Very good.
And this will be up because Bruce texted me. This will be up on our YouTube channel. So if you feel compelled to listen to us again, you will be able to in all of our glory.
Yes.
So-
And we also have previous previous videos from last year and the year before, which actually went into the ins and outs of print competition, the actual slides. We just didn't want to do the same presentation again. I'm sorry, guys, but you can watch it. There's just a few tweaks this year, so you could go to the slides on, again, mdppa.com under print competition. All of the slides are there for you to look at them at your own pace. We just wanted something a little bit more interactive for this year.
Yeah, and just not to keep going, but the PPA has great information on their website, great videos, especially like as it relates to print competition. They'll talk you basically through everything. So they're really, really well done.
Available to non-PPA members.
Pardon me?
Are those available to non-PPA members?
I don't think so.
Okay. All right. Just want to make sure that we.
Didn't think about that. So.
No.
Well,
All
thank
right.
you everybody for.
Good. We're good.
And you're going to send the recording to Bruce, right?
Yes, I will.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Joe, for chiming in, and Jay, thanks so much for
Oh, you're welcome.
that demonstration.
Welcome.
And thank you guys for hanging out with us this afternoon.
Have a good day, everybody.
See you all later.
See you on the 23rd. Take care.
Bye.
Bye. Bye, Paula.